Hi there. This is a little podcast about me and my husband's thoughts about the Swedish school and the school plan. So he's just going to read out something that he found on which website was it, Paul?
It's on Skolverket. It's the Lero plan in English.
All right, the government site for guidelines for the schools, which all schools have to follow. Okay, please read, please.
Okay. The first section in the plan is fundamental values and tasks of the school. So I'll read this. Fundamental values. The national school system is based on democratic foundations. The Education Act stipulates that education in the school system aims at pupils acquiring developed knowledge and values. It should promote the development and learning of all pupils and a lifelong desire to learn. It's not that controversial. Education should impart and establish respect for human rights and the fundamental democratic values on which Swedish society is based. Each and everyone working in the school should also encourage respect for the intrinsic value of each person and the environment we all share. Okay, this started on the democracy thing. Let me scroll down a bit. Okay, objectivity and open approaches. The school should be open to different ideas and encourage their expression. But that's only so long as you go to the school and do the entire government curriculum for 10 years.
As long as you do it the right way, isn't it? What the majority have decided.
Yeah.
So if you're a minority and you don't agree with it, then tough shit.
It should emphasize the importance of forming personal standpoints and provide opportunities for doing this. Teaching should be objective and encompass a range of different approaches. I don't know how teaching can be objective when the teachers are paid from tax money. So they're not going to be telling children that taxation is theft, are they? So that it's impossible to be objective unless it's in a market environment. All parents should be able to send their children to school fully confident that their children will not be prejudiced in favour of any particular view. Now, I'm pretty sure they put Swedish flags on the table at everyone's birthday party at daycare. And the textbooks that I've looked in, they are extremely statist. The whole point of view is the state is good. Democracy is good. It's not two wolves and a lamb arguing over what to have for dinner at all. It's the best way to do things, and the government only does what's best for everyone. So it's fine that they take about 75% of your earnings.
Yeah, more than that.
Okay.
Yeah, what I reacted to when I was reading this text before was the norms of and values of the school, because all schools have to follow this, and they're very clear in teaching what they think is right. So if you have a different opinion, that's not right.
It does say at the start, for the compulsory school, the government determines the school's fundamental values and tasks. So if the government's deciding the school's values, obviously the values are going to be in line with having a government. And then it says the overall goals and guidelines for education and the ordinances for the syllabuses. So the government decides what you should do, what you should think about stuff, how much of everything you should do, and how you should do it.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, they want to treat people as individuals and ensure that there is no one particular prejudiced view enforced on the children.
The big difference with this Swedish curriculum and most other curriculums in the world is that in Sweden you don't have a choice. All of the schools have to follow this curriculum, and no alternative education like homeschooling or unschooling or democratic schools are allowed. So while you in a country like the US or England can say that you don't agree with these values, because most schools have these kind of values in most Western countries. But there you have the option to opt out of it. In Sweden, you don't even have that option. You're forced to do it. And we had a little chat when we went to Härryda kommun and chatted with the people that worked with the educational department. Do you remember that? We had a little chat about children's rights and why homeschooling was not allowed in Sweden, and why we couldn't.
Yeah, I don't remember the whole conversation, but I remember asking them, will they take our kids if we don't send them to school? And they pretty quickly changed the subject and said, "Oh no, why don't we just introduce each other first, rather than just getting to the point?"
Yeah.
Which you know.
But in the end, when we had a really long chat, we found out that if we didn't send our kids to school, they would send us a fine for every month that's higher than your income, because they can see what you're taxing. So they'd send it for a higher amount, and there would be the judge that would send it, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And then if you repeatedly didn't pay it, social would come, and you're always under the threat that if you don't play it by the rules, they got the guns and they can take your kid, because they've done that to Dominic Johansson. So that's what people are scared about in Sweden. You if you stay in Sweden, you have to follow the rules. You don't really have a right not to have your kids in this kind of state schooling. You're not even allowed to have alternative schools, like proper Montessori schools that actually follow Montessori 100% and things like that. They're not allowed either.
Anyway, what was interesting for me at that conversation was the lengths they went to avoid answering a straight question. And the answer to the question, if I don't send my kids to school, will you take my kids, is yes. But they went all around the houses, and we just literally had to go through every step of the process to nail it down what the actual facts were. But I think that's what school basically teaches you, to avoid the honest questions, like where do the teachers' wages come from? And they come from pointing a gun at someone and saying, "Give me your money." But obviously, teachers can't stand there in front of the class and discuss that in an honest way. Well, they could do. It just doesn't really suit their agenda.
No, it doesn't. So my thoughts were a little bit about that in Sweden they say that it's the children's right to go to school, but when they don't want to go to school, that's not allowed either. They just couldn't. We couldn't talk to them and get them to say that, well, it's not a right then. It is only an obligation. It's not a right to go to school in Sweden, because you only have that choice. You don't have any choice to opt out. And for me, I'm not really against the idea of having a school that our kids can go to, but I think the school should have the values that we share, and a school should not be state funded. I think that's really unethical. I think if somebody is using a school, they should pay for it 100%, so that you have your agenda on it. And in our case, it would be to be
a radical agenda.
Yeah, very very radical, exactly. So in our case, it would be to teach about the non-aggression principle rather than democratic values, because even though I like democracies to some parts, I don't like it 100%. Like in this case, where a majority of people in Sweden have decided that the school should be only one way of schooling, and that you shouldn't have any options, and that you should punish the people that doesn't follow it. This is the majority bullying. the minority.
Yeah, there's a difference between a democracy and republic. A democracy is just the 51% can vote to murder 49% if they want to. But in a republic, there's basic rules which are pre-agreed, and then all of the votes take part with the majority deciding, but within those rules. So this was the idea in America, but it sort of
went out of control, didn't it?
It went out of control. So that was the idea, that inalienable rights. But obviously, they have the problem that the majority can vote to change the ground rules. So maybe it slows it down a bit, but not very much.
No.
But in a proper republic where you have the basic rules that no theft, no murder, no violence, no fraud. Well, if you follow those rules, you can't have a state. All you have is a variety of companies that provide services like security and other government so-called services.
Well, the problem is that there's too few people that think that this would be a good idea, because basically you're brainwashed into thinking that these things can't be run privately. Why do you think that is?
12 years of school, or however many years of school it is.
Yeah,
I think that's
exactly
the main reason. And also, well, in Sweden, so many people are employed by the government that, the fact that those people get to vote is just a complete conflict of interest.
Exactly. You want to keep your jobs and you want to keep your wages. Yeah. It's like when you're teaching something in the university or doing some research or something like that. When you finish your study, you finish your job. So you got to keep on studying and giving new perspectives. That's why there's so many ridiculous research things going on that's funded by tax money all the time about stupid stuff, isn't it?
So I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, I was just having in mind this study that was going on about males giving birth in Sweden. That was a few months ago. That
because the free market would never fund a study like that. Exactly. I mean, they might do for entertainment. I mean, if you look at
if somebody pay for it, but I mean, I don't think it's right to
by definition if someone pays
to
for
pay,
it,
but everybody else's money.
No, but
no. Is that all you had on your mind, or do you have something else you want to add about democratic values and the Swedish school? And oh yeah, I was just gonna say to you that I had some thoughts about what it could be, why alternative schools are so unaccepted in Sweden. You can't run an alternative school. You get shut down if you don't have the values and norms and the program that dictates in the Swedish läroplan curriculum. And you can't do the homeschooling or unschooling, world schooling, or any kind of different schooling outside of this plan. So because a lot of people, I just want to say to you, lots of people think that that are in the homeschooling community in Sweden. There's no homeschoolers in Sweden. They've all moved to different countries. But the people that would like to homeschool, they seem to think, the majority, I understand, that the laws will change, that you will, through democracy, be able to make homeschooling legal. And I just think that they're pretty much they're wasting the time. They're just going to stay in Sweden and they're going to hope that this changes. But I don't think that it will change. And I wonder what you're thinking about this.
Well, whether people will be able to vote to have homeschooling legal in Sweden?
Yeah.
I can't. Well, it's not going to happen.
No, it's
because
just... Yeah.
The people who are in the government, they are there because they love telling other people what to do and controlling everybody. That's their whole reason for being there. So they're not going to And they understand that the way to control people is to get to the children first. All governments have done that throughout history, is get the children, and then you control then your position if control is safe. So they're not going to give up that, or certainly not easily.
And the reason pretty much why that is like that is because most people are negative to it. They think that
Most people are negative to what?
To homeschooling and alternative education.
Most people in Sweden?
Yeah, that I've talked to, the absolute majority, they're really negative to it. They don't understand it.
The thing is, though, once you've put your kids in school, it's like every parent you meet and you say, oh, what's your kid's school like? They all say, oh, it's really good. Because if they admit that it's rubbish, or that government schools are rubbish, then they're in a bit of a situation, which means that they'd have to, or in Sweden, if people were honest, they'd have to decide to leave the country once they actually admit that the system is rubbish and they've put their kids in it for 10 years.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but it's not only that. It could also be that I'm sure there are a lot of really good teachers, and there are loads of children that really love going to school in Sweden. But the thing is that they don't know that they can't opt out.
Well, you say there's a lot of really good teachers, but teaching has the lowest requirements, and the lowest school grades and college grades to get into it, and those grades do correlate quite well with IQ in other countries, at least. I don't know.
Yeah, statistically, it will be a lot of teachers that are not very good at the job, but there are always people that love doing their job.
Especially the new teachers, you really have got a lot of thickos there to teach your children, and not only thickos, but statists. So they fundamentally believe that it's okay to use violence to take stuff from the minority to give to a majority, and at the same time, in the school plan, it says that they have to teach the opposite of that. So I don't know how they can ever teach people how to think, or help children learn how to think, with all the giant contradictions that are just obvious. But I say they're obvious, but they're not to the kids, and I guess I guess they're not to the teachers. Otherwise, I don't really think the teachers are just there lying. I just think they've never put it together, that they're just preaching opposite things at the same time.
Yeah, you don't really understand it, I think, until you're an adult and you have children yourself, and you realize that you just don't have a choice. It would be totally different if you actually had a choice. Like if you're in America or in England or something like that, where you can have an option to do that the parent is responsible for the education for the children, that would be different, but it's not like that.
Well, at least if homeschooling is an option, at least there's some sort of competition between schools and non-school. So at least there is a bit of a market there. But when it is forced attendance to all schools, then there's there's not much incentive to keep the standard up, and there's nothing to compare the results with.
No, I'd really love to have a freedom-based Bitcoin school that's voluntary to go to. I think that would be great. But I think that if we started one, I'm probably gonna work against it, because it's totally against what their aim is.
Well, I think you'd have to liberate Fora first and start a little nation there.
Yeah, that's a beautiful island in the Baltic Sea. It's very nice. It's only 600 people living there, I think.
Yeah, so I don't think it would. If someone had some money, I don't know if anyone bought loads of bitcoins when they were a penny each. But if you had a load of money, you could buy all the property there, take it over, and get a load of ANCAPs to move in, have a vote, because that's the way they like to decide things.
But it's not very ANCAP-ish to have votes, is it?
No, but you know what the result's going to be, because only ANCAP people are going to live there, and that's how I think it's the UN decides that an area can self-determine or create their own country. Well, yeah, I think that'd be quite a good, efficient way to creating a free state.
But then you would probably get attacked from the military. There would be people with guns coming, Or do you think
No,
that
no,
Putin
because
would send some submarines or something?
oh, what, to defend you?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think there'd be a lot of people defending the idea of a free country, but I don't. They wouldn't attack you because it would be too obvious. They'd just do things like um, make sure you had no access to any markets, so you wouldn't be able to get any deliveries of stuff, and you'd basically have to live off the land. So that's
Yeah,
why it'd be tricky. That's
it's
what.
not very self-sufficient. You'd have to go fishing every day and live on dried fish or something.
Yeah, you'd have to go fishing, or you'd have to be a smuggler. That's what you'd have to do to start with. But it would change. I don't think there'd be. I don't think the Swedish Navy would be blowing people out of the water. I mean, they don't. They don't blow up um, like North African migrants in the water who are, obviously breaking the law by trying to get into Sweden. So yeah, well, you could just get a boat from Fårö back to Sweden to go and buy stuff, and when you get some hassle, just shout asylum, collect some benefits, buy all your shopping, and go back. I don't know. I'm sure it wouldn't work that straightforward,
No,
but that seems to be, there are some magic words you can use so you don't get into trouble. It seems.
yeah, I don't really know. I don't really think that Fårö is the best place in the world to
Okay, but it's
to
the only.
start an island either.
No, but it needs to be done somewhere to have a, because it's not going to work when you've got more than half of the people who are either working for the government or who are on benefits. You know,
No,
so
no,
you're
it's
never
not.
going to vote. You're never going to. Democracy's never going to work. Um,
No, because democracy is basically the tyranny of the majority. It is what the majority decides. So if you got 100 people and they have a vote on killing someone, and then 51 people votes to kill that person, then they can
yeah,
do
sure.
that because they voted for it. This is basically, this is a really drastic example, but it's basically what democracy is. And this is why people that think differently will never be able to be liberated with the education in a country that has set these rules for strict education like that.
I don't know. I think Foro would be more viable than Vatican City.
Okay.
Vatican City is completely landlocked and surrounded by Italy, and it
Yeah,
depends on
but
Italy.
the Italians love the Pope. They do.
No, whatever. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. But Foro, you've got sea access. You could go to, basically you've got borders, like sea borders with quite a lot of different countries.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
people are just gonna move to if they want to move somewhere. If they want to homeschool and they live in Sweden, they're actually thinking about moving somewhere. They're just gonna go to Åland, aren't they? Because there they can get
More
quite
benefits.
generous benefits. Yeah, and they can speak Swedish, and they don't have to go through the bother of creating their own country and stuff like that. That's what they do. But still, it's like I still don't really understand. I have been trying to understand for such a long time why if you're leaving Sweden because
No, but
it's important with the education to do it your
you
way,
go you go to
then why do you go to
yeah you go
Åland
to
of all places?
you go to Åland because people speak Swedish there, so obviously it's more comfortable to, even though you've left Sweden, to still be in a place where people speak Swedish. I don't think there's many other places in the world outside Sweden where people speak Swedish.
No, there's not.
Right.
But
So that's
the
why.
the thing is, if you do something so radical like taking care of your own education for your children, then you are still going to be a minority in a culture like that. You will always be a minority. Well, if you would, for instance, move to England or America or something,
You're still a
it's not.
minority.
Yeah, no, but it's not really in that way. It's about 3%, I think, that homeschools in the US, and there's a lot of support. There's plenty of homeschool co-ops and communities and stuff like that. While in a place
Oh,
like
but three.
Åland, they're a little
Okay,
bit
but
spread out, and it's not
three
many of
percent
them.
is 3% is a minority.
Yeah, but it's still a couple of million.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but people don't speak Swedish in America, so I
No.
completely understand why people move to Orland. It just doesn't look that great for me. But then
Doesn't
again,
really appeal.
like Swedish isn't my first or my only language,
No.
and not really barely a second language.
Yeah. I wish Swedish people could see more possibilities than just moving to Åland just because they're already Swedish people there. Because you can always, if you earn many enough, then you can create another area where you can move to and you can start a community learning center and things like that.
Yeah, well, if you're Swedish and your main thing is to homeschool and to hang out with other Swedes, I don't know how many families there are homeschooling on Åland. How many is it? Do you know?
I'm not sure, but I think around 50.
Right. So basically, you're there for a community of 50 families, and
maybe you have some friends
maybe
that are also from Åland and things like that.
Maybe you have some other friends in Åland. I don't know how many friends you might have, and
still, it's enough people to hang out with, really.
It's enough, yeah, okay. But it's not loads of people, and you could easily create a community of that few people somewhere better.
If you're just looking at Bali, there's about...
Say easily. You couldn't easily. Physically easily you could, but actually arranging that is not so easy, especially with the access to government benefits that a lot of people seem to want who homeschool.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it's not really my cup of tea.
No, not really. But for instance, in Ubud in Bali, there's about, 5,000 families or something like that living there, and it's many people that homeschool, and it's even a few Swedish people there. So a place like that, you already have a sense of community like that. And also if you move to like Austin,
where are you talking about?
Ubud has got many people homeschooling, even Swedish families homeschooling there. And in Utah in the US, there's a couple of families, Swedish families homeschooling, and also in Florida and Austin. You can create a community. If just a couple of families move together, you can create
because you can't live in the US unless you have a green card.
No.
So you might be perfectly able to support yourself and not be on benefits and whatnot. But that isn't enough to be allowed to live in America. And well, same for Bali. I mean, you can go in and out and get your visa renewed, but they've just changed the rules in Thailand, so you can't do that anymore. So they might do that in Bali soon.
Yeah,
so I mean, if you're happy to keep moving around, then you can be anywhere you want for like up to for a couple of months at least.
Yeah, I think the best idea is to just be in the former communist countries of Eastern Europe, because they're still in the European Union, and they have very high living standard, and they're quite free on these things. It's about the same laws here in Czech Republic as there is in Finland, for instance, with the schooling. So you can do homeschooling here too, with 2 checkups per year. Anyway, running out of time, and basically the message in this podcast is that just because we have democracy in Sweden, it's not going to change. Homeschooling is never going to be allowed in Sweden because the majority is against it, and that's not going to happen.
I don't agree with that at all. It's not because the majority is against it. It's because when you vote, you don't choose what you're voting for. You're just voting to choose someone who may or may not do what they say they're going to do. You can't hold them to actually doing what they say they're going to do, and they don't even know which policy of theirs you were voting for them.
But the majority have chosen that person, and they get entrusted them.
Yeah, but which of the parties in Sweden supports homeschooling? Like unregulated homeschooling.
I think there's no parties that is inside of the government, right. But I think Kristdemokraterna has got the most sort of family-friendly policy, but it's still not friendly enough.
Okay, but if you're going to vote for them, how do they know? I mean, they're Christian Democrats, so people might be voting for them because they're Christians. How do you know it's for homeschooling?
Yeah, no, voting is. I think it's just unethical, and it's way of using violence against other people through what the people that have voted for decides.
Unless it's a chance to vote to get rid of a layer of government like Brexit.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Anyway, that's enough for today. I'm sure we'll have another podcast soon. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.